Hi, everyone. I'm Preeti Chowdhury, Executive Director of Drive Ohio, and I feel really honored to be here today on behalf of the Ohio Department of Transportation. Real talk, I fell not once but twice yesterday on the exhibition hall floor, so I also feel very lucky that I've made it without falling here. For those that aren't familiar, Drive Ohio is ODOT's smart mobility hub that works to advance automated, connected, and electric vehicle technology, both on the ground and in the air. The team at Drive Ohio is quite literally leading the transportation transformation. So I'm really excited that I get to brag about their work to all of you today. I want to start by playing a little game called Which of These Does Not Belong? If you've been to 1 or 2 or 20 OTECs, you may notice that I'm unlike former keynote speakers. And besides a couple obvious differences, these folks usually have motivational stories related to their unique perspectives as athletes, generals, entertainers, but rarely do they relate to our transportation profession. So I'm excited and a little intimidated by this chance to address a few thousand of my friends and colleagues and wax poetic about our shared passion and profession. But first, Sarah implored me to tell you a little bit about my life story and how I got here, so here we go. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, and I'm the daughter of Indian immigrants. My mom, the eternal pragmatist, made it very clear early on that I needed to pursue an education and career that would yield decent pay and job security. So my hopes and dreams of being an R&B singer were squashed. But lucky for her and for me, I really enjoyed math and science, and we could agree that a career in engineering would be okay. The specific path my career took can be credited to Professor Eulario, who I had my sophomore year in college, and suggested a traffic engineering internship at a firm in New York. Before that internship, I thought maybe I'd focus on structures. You know, you think civil engineering, you think buildings. But that first job experience opened my eyes to the impact that transportation has on people. I found transportation engineering to be as much about social and societal interaction as it is about science. And the ability to feel connection in my profession gave me a greater sense of purpose. I was particularly interested in the intersection of transit and technology, some of which had to do with my upbringing. As I mentioned, I grew up in New York City, which means I was brought up using multiple modes of transportation. Typically, I took the bus or subway everywhere, and unlike many of my friends, I even learned to drive at 16. Now, this was only because one of my uncles actually owned a driving school. And as an aside, I can confirm that learning to drive in the Bronx is not like what I saw in the movies with parking lots and wide open spaces. It was more like, I'll pick you up on a busy bus route, you quickly adjust your mirrors, and Godspeed. So over the years growing up in New York and living elsewhere, I regularly commuted by foot, bus, train, ferry boat, and even in recent years, car, since moving to Ohio. And I learned through personal and professional experience that our traditional transportation solutions need reimagining. I remain a transit lover and advocate, but fixed route transit is not feasible everywhere. We know that widening roadways doesn't always improve congestion. These types of limitations are ultimately what attracted me to the potential of using technology to solve mobility problems. You heard Director Marchbanks kick off the conference by talking about the changing landscape in transportation and the paradigm shift that's now squarely underway. At Drive Ohio, we challenge the status quo with a vision to address these gaps that we see with traditional transportation solutions. We ask questions like, how can we leverage technology to make our roadways safer, reduce crashes, and save lives? How can we use data and digital infrastructure to keep our assets in the best condition possible? And how can we expand access to communities across our state, which we know is key to quality of life, safety, physical health, and so much more? We certainly don't know all the answers, but a large part of our mission lies in testing unproven solutions in real-world environments. Sue likes to remind me that the evolution of technology is not linear. Proving and disproving new ideas are all successes that get us closer to providing real, tangible benefits for the people of Ohio. The challenge I've given my team since day one is to never lose sight of the why. Let's not test technology just to say we did. Instead, can we identify human needs and issues that drive our purpose and our desired outcomes? Furthermore, let's hold ourselves accountable and consistently see how we're doing against what we'd hoped for. Our UAS Center keeps the human connection in mind every day in the flight operations and training we do to support ODOT and the research and testing that'll lead to advanced air mobility as a new mode. On the operations side, we work with ODOT districts to train bridge inspectors to fly drones so that our workers spend less time in snooper trucks alongside fast-moving traffic. We equip our surveyors with drones to create 3D models that they can use at the safety of their desks instead of playing in traffic and using poles to measure. And we're leading research projects that stem from district collaborations to tackle other pain points like spraying hard-to-reach vegetation and performing underwater inspection of bridge piers. Beyond supporting our colleagues at ODOT, our team works with agencies across the state to respond to emergencies and minimize risk of harm. We fly drones with magnetometers for the Department of Natural Resources that uncover orphan wells that leak toxic chemicals and water contaminants. We partner with the Department of Health to fly drones that detect radiation to keep first responders safe. And we help the EMA assess damage after natural disasters like tornadoes and landslides. When we look into the future with advanced air mobility, a lot of the initial questions that come up really revolve around convenience. Things like, when will I be able to Uber an aircraft? Or why can't DoorDash take to the skies and drop my Chipotle order on my front porch? We'll probably get there at some point. And in fact, drone technology is capable of accomplishing these tasks today. But these scenarios are still a ways away because we don't have the infrastructure to support them. So our UAS Center is working to close that infrastructure gap, but not with the goal of accelerating burrito delivery. We work with local and federal partners like NASA to bring companies to Ohio that are using next-gen aviation technology like electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft for medical missions and middle-mile cargo delivery. There is immense potential, especially in the healthcare industry, as we begin to imagine the day when we can deliver blood to the scene of a crash, efficiently transport organs by air, and even get doctors and nurses to where they're needed most. While there have been a handful of operations that are starting to address these needs, we're not able to scale them up because there's no universal air traffic management control system for low altitudes. Essentially, we don't have that typical air traffic control for altitudes below 2,000 feet to detect and avoid collisions. Because this system doesn't exist, the federal government generally restricts anyone without special permission from flying drones unless the operator can always see the aircraft, which limits how far we can go, literally and figuratively. So our UAS Center team, in partnership with the Air Force Research Lab, developed SkyVision, a detect and avoid radar system based out of Springfield Beckley Airport, to enable drone operations beyond the visual line of sight. By refining and scaling low-altitude air traffic control like this, we can bring the use of uncrewed aircraft for freight package and personal delivery closer to reality. While that's in the works, Helen and the team are looking to test the latest and greatest aircraft to deliver on our core mission of improved safety. We want to try a few different types of advanced drones to rapidly respond to crashes, provide situational awareness to dispatchers, and allow first responders to clear incidents more quickly. One of the technologies we hope to test is an autonomous drone that would live in a box near the Brent Spence Bridge. This drone could be deployed on demand to perform emergency response tasks, construction inspection, and is even capable of fire suppression. But we're not solely focused on improving our response to crashes and emergencies. Our team is advancing automation in vehicles and in support of ODOT operations and maintenance to minimize the risk of crashes in the first place. Like with our Rural Automated Driving Systems project, where we're testing automated semi-trucks and passenger vehicles in Southeast Ohio. The rural environment is what makes this deployment unique, since most automated vehicle testing and use thus far has been in urban areas. At Drive Ohio, we believe in the importance of testing and in the crawl, walk, run approach. And in a state like Ohio, the majority of the landscape is rural in nature, so it's important to ensure that these solutions can work and provide benefit across our terrain. I should say in this and in all of our projects, a human driver is at the wheel, even when the automated technology is engaged. Here at the conference, we've had one of the passenger vehicles from this project at our booth in the exhibition hall, showcasing the technology that allows it to operate autonomously on 2-lane rural routes, navigating curves, hills, and other geographic challenges. The semi-trucks for this project are actually on the road now in Southeast Ohio using platooning technology to deliver products across the state. And we're deploying more semi-trucks with platooning technology for another project in partnership with the Indiana DOT in 2024. These trucks will travel on I-70, the heavily trafficked freight corridor between Columbus and Indianapolis. For those who aren't familiar, platooning is essentially follow the leader for a pair of vehicles. While in platooning mode, our lead truck determines speed and direction, and the automated system controls steering, acceleration, and braking for the following vehicle. That's what the tech will do. But getting back to the human connection, we have to be clear that this technology is not meant to replace truck drivers, but instead make their job easier and potentially have a huge impact on roadway safety by improving crash avoidance capabilities and reducing driver stress. This could be a game changer when you consider a reality where even as our human reflexes are delayed, when we're tired, stressed, or distracted, the technology's reaction time is unchanging. This during a time when just a few seconds are the difference between a crash or a near miss. Brianna has emphasized that when it comes to communicating about these types of projects, public education is pivotal and can be very tricky. Getting people to trust the government is already an uphill battle, and there are plenty of technology skeptics that routinely fill our inbox. So when we talk about what we're doing, we're asking the public first and foremost to trust unproven technology, and furthermore to trust unproven technology being tested by the government. We definitely have our work cut out for us. On top of the trust factor, it's really important that we make this information accessible. Oftentimes, fear and skepticism boil down to a lack of understanding. Focusing on transparency with plain language is crucial to public acceptance and to successful community integration. We're especially mindful of this when we talk about data, whether it's collecting anonymous data to measure the effectiveness of safety messages or leveraging existing vehicle data for asset management. Data's role in transportation innovation is growing. Data from cameras and sensors in modern vehicles already collect a lot of information that could be useful to ODOT. For example, anyone who has lane keep assist knows that the system relies on clear pavement markings. So if the marking isn't sufficient, the system kicks off. Imagine that when the system kicked off, ODOT automatically received information with the location of that pavement marking deficiency, which then allows us to speed up our maintenance response time. We're working on a research project with Honda to test the viability of that very scenario, but we'll also look to provide information on signage, guardrails, potholes, and more to optimize our ability to maintain this critical infrastructure. This is just one of the ways that we hope to work with auto manufacturers to put transportation data to use in our operations. For another project, we've partnered with ODOT's IT team to develop 2 applications that use their innovative in-house data streaming platform. The first would receive airbag deployment alerts from car companies and automatically provide crash location and severity information to emergency responders. This could hasten emergency response, particularly in rural areas with limited cell service and camera coverage. The second application would use machine learning to predict and proactively mitigate crashes. Essentially, the program would analyze historical crash information to identify when real-time conditions around speed, traffic volume, weather, and more look like they might pose a higher probability of a crash occurring. The system would alert our traffic management center operators and provide recommended mitigations to reduce the risk of crashes, with actions like lowering the speed limit or pre-positioning law enforcement at hotspots. Fewer crashes, quicker response, increased safety. It's the cornerstone of what we do. Naturally, with a focus on roadway safety, we work hand in hand with law enforcement. And one of the topics that's come up recently is an uptick of stalled or disabled vehicles, but specifically electric vehicles that have run out of battery. Unlike gas-powered vehicles who call for roadside assistance, many times the only thing to do with a stalled EV is get a tow. Planning for additional EV infrastructure to help combat this issue is something that Julie and the team have been planning for since 2019. And NEVI funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law rapidly accelerated those plans. While many states took a more cautious approach, Ohio was the first out of the gate to release a request for proposals, which was a strategic move to put Ohio ahead of the pack for sought-after equipment. and specialized technicians to install the stations. Over the summer, Governor DeWine announced the first round of winning vendors and locations, and we're moving quickly to be first in the nation to begin construction and ultimately be first to have an operational station under the federal program. Now, if you drive a gas-powered vehicle like myself, you might be thinking, that's great that ODOT's building all these EV chargers, but how does that benefit me? The whole premise of this program is designed to increase access to new transportation technologies now and for years to come. A lack of charging infrastructure limits EV drivers from traveling long distances and can cause stress and anxiety when you're uncertain about where you'll be able to charge up next. Since the program began, we've held more than a dozen public and stakeholder meetings to hear from our customers about what they need most. For example, I talked to a woman from Columbus who was taking a weekend trip to Cleveland with her kids, and she shared that the only fast charger on her route was in Mansfield. So she had to plan her whole weekend around the ability to get to that one charging location. Another man was driving from Arizona to Ohio and in his EV, and he recounted a moment of panic as he watched his battery continue to decrease, not sure if he'd be able to make it to the next available charger. This new infrastructure will make travel safer, easier, and more enjoyable. And removing this uncertainty removes a barrier to vehicle electrification. Automakers across the country have vowed to make the shift to electric over the next decade, so our work to expand charging availability ensures that Ohioans aren't left behind, and so that drivers have options, both when purchasing a vehicle and when fueling. Drive Ohio was recently approached by a reporter who was working on a story about the impact of transportation on climate, and wondered if expanding transit or increasing the number of EVs was the better option. Spoiler alert, we did not answer her question, not because we were trying to dodge it, but because Drive Ohio was created so that we aren't confined to either or. It's not either intersection safety upgrades or automated driving systems. It's not either ODOT maintenance crews or drone inspections. It's both and. Our purpose is to layer transportation technology with traditional engineering to achieve the biggest safety impact possible. So now you know a little bit about what we're doing and hopefully why we're doing it. I was catching up with Katie last week, and we got to talking about the how. When we know our purpose and have clear goals in mind, how do we lead people to get there? My shift to this role has been my most significant career transition thus far. Beyond all of the change you would expect with going from private sector to public sector, this felt like a jump that I wasn't expecting in my career at all. So when I was offered this role to be Drive Ohio's executive director, I honestly wasn't sure if I wanted it. I had just had a baby and a 1-year-old running around at home, and I loved my previous work and producing things. I never really craved a position of authority. My very strict mother would share that historically I've never responded well to authority, so that could have something to do with it. But my biggest deterrent was self-doubt. It was just really hard for me to envision being a leader. My friend Julia had to shake me up to make me see that that's part of the reason I needed to do it. I could be considered an unconventional leader. I'm sensitive and non-confrontational. I'm also far too casual, and I curse way too much. As a result of parenthood, I tend to over-caffeinate, which can make me a bit edgy at times, and I could go on and on. But the thing I try to bring to my team is the same thing I try to bring to my work, which is connection. I do my very best to connect with the people around me, to foster an environment where we can all feel proud of what we contribute to. The jury is still out on how effective this approach is. All of our stories are still being told. But it's clear that our world is rapidly changing. So let's give the unconventional a shot and be damned with the status quo. If you're wondering why I randomly name-dropped a bunch of women throughout this thing, it's because I wanted to call out how meaningful y'all have been in my personal and professional development. We may not be represented well in terms of numbers, but there are a lot of good ones out there, so maybe one of you can do next year's keynote. The paradigm shift in transportation that Director Marchbanks referred to is here in more ways than one. In the innovations you can see happening right now, right here in Ohio, and in the renewed interest and investment in the importance of infrastructure. But I'm most excited about the ways we will shift personally and professionally in response to this transformation. It's hard to say what that shift should look like, but I think we can all start by creating space. space to test new ideas and innovations, space to enable those innovations to scale without limitations based on tradition and what feels comfortable, and space for people to sit at the table because it matters. Thank you.